On the 19th of June 2020, local streaming service Showmax decided to remove a number of Leon Schuster films from their platform, citing his content as being, quote, racially insensitive material. This move comes during the heightened Black Lives Matter protests, which began in America and have since trickled down to many parts of the world, including South Africa. The actor and comedian, who has portrayed countless characters in blackface in his films over the past few years, reacted to the news saying he was shocked and, quote, can't believe that the content of his films does any harm. He further stated that he has not received any complaints from his fans for wearing blackface and that, quote, we are too obsessed with color. Now, these developments have divided South Africans into two camps, mainly those who believe Leon Schuster movies are indeed racist and those who argue that Leon Schuster movies are not, in fact, racist. In this video, we will attempt to answer the question, are Leon Schuster movies racist? We will briefly begin by explaining the Schuster versus Showmax situation. Then we will dive into the meaning and understanding of blackface in the South African context. Thirdly, we will explain why Leon Schuster movies are considered to be racist by some. Following that, we will explore why others believe Leon Schuster movies are not racist. And then, perhaps most importantly, I will offer you my 2 cents and final thoughts on this entire situation. So, let us begin. I know. Listen, I'm working on that intro. Anyway,
Schuster versus Showmax. Showmax reportedly removed 9 Schuster films, namely You Must Be Joking, Oh Shucks It's Schuster, You Must Be Joking 2, Sweet and Short, Mama Jack, Mr. Bones 2, Shucks Pay Back the Money, and the 2018 release Frank and Fearless. After Showmax confirmed that it had removed Schuster's films to undergo a process of review, Schuster told the Sowetan that, quote, I'm obviously very disappointed and I don't see the reason behind it. I'm trying to find the reason and I'm battling. Showmax then cleared the air on its decision to remove Schuster's movies from its platform. Showmax's head of communications, Richard Borman, was quoted by IOL Entertainment as having said, quote, we removed Leon Schuster's content as a precautionary measure, pending a review to ensure there is no racially insensitive material. This is part of a wider review of content on Showmax. It's something happening in parallel with reviews by streaming services worldwide.
The Black Lives Matter movement has been raising awareness of racism and discrimination in many institutions. And as a result, international streaming services like Netflix, HBO Max, and Hulu have been removing a host of shows from their platforms. Shows that are deemed racially controversial. So shows like Community, Scrubs, and Golden Girls have had certain episodes featuring blackface in them removed. Blackface is generally understood as a term used to describe a form of theatrical makeup used predominantly by non-black performers to represent a caricature of a black person. In order to better understand the phenomenon of blackface in the South African climate, it is important that we explore why blackface is considered to be culturally offensive. A 2014 Vox article titled Don't Get What's Wrong with Blackface, Here's Why It's So Offensive, gives an excellent description of blackface. Desmond Harris, the writer, describes blackface as much more than just dark makeup used to enhance a costume. Desmond Harris also writes about the American origins of blackface, stating, its American origins can be traced to minstrel shows. In the mid to late 19th century, white actors would routinely use black grease paint on their faces when depicting plantation slaves and freed blacks on stage. To be clear, these weren't flattering representations at all. taking place against the backdrop of a society that systematically mistreated and dehumanized Black people. They were mocking portrayals that reinforced the idea that African Americans were inferior in every way. Keep all this information in mind as we reference a 2014 City Press article written by Roger Young titled, "Is Leon Schuster Blackface?" Young notes that Schuster's films are choked, his words, with blackface. Young describes blackface as makeup used by a non-black performer to play a black role. And by this definition, Leon Schuster is guilty of using blackface. But what baffles Young is the lack of criticism. Young asks the question, why aren't Black South Africans offended by Schuster's obvious use of blackface? Young makes 4 possible conclusions for this. A. South Africans are not educated enough to understand how offensive blackface is. B. Blackface does not apply here the same way it does in the US. C. South Africans just don't give a damn. D. Leon Schuster is not blackface. Now, let us use Young's 4 possible conclusions to discuss blackface in the South African climate with relation to Leon Schuster movies. Beginning with A. South Africans are not educated enough to understand how offensive blackface is.
Some of our competitors claim that their grilled fish is fresh, when in actual fact, it's frozen, so it's not really fresh, it's fresh. Which is a little bit like saying,
we're just gonna put it on the expense account.
oh, it just needs a little TLC.
In 2013, the Advertising Standards Authority banned that advert after receiving complaints saying it was racist. According to the Advertising Standards Authority, the commercial is offensive as it portrays a stereotype that Black politicians are liars. This technique is known as blackface and is an inherently racist form of acting. The Black character is depicted with derogatory intention, speaks with a thick accent, and recalls a stereotypical Black dictator. To achieve the desired result of showing a corrupt official, there was no need for the man to be made out to be Black. The Cape Town Fish Market Management responded to the complaints by apologizing.
We just like to say we're sorry. Like, ooh, ha, sorry. So, sorry if we caused any offense.
The Cape Town Fish Market, it doesn't get any fresher.
They also mentioned Leon Schuster in their response, saying, Schuster has made extensive use of white actors playing persons of color to parody South African society for 20 years. This scenario highlights 2 important things. Firstly, South Africans are in fact educated enough to understand blackface and how offensive it is. And secondly, the Schuster position has blurred the lines. Who gets to decide which white actors get to play Black people to parody South African society? Let us bring back to mind the 2014 Vox article in which the writer notes the American origins of the blackface stereotype by tracing it back to minstrel shows in the late 19th century American entertainment culture. Blackface draws more attention and controversy in the United States because it is believed to be a largely American stereotype of Black people. Although blackface has been reported in other parts of the world, it remains mostly associated with America. And even though South Africa and the United States share a similar history of institutionalized racism against Black people, blackface never really took hold in the South African consciousness, apart from very few instances here and there. Taking offense to blackface has been viewed as an American creation. This is why in 2015, only 2 years after the Cape Town Fish Market saga, Schuster can release films like this to little or no criticism. If this film were made for an American audience, it would attract controversy. But make it for a South African audience, and it attracts ticket sales.
Thixo waseGeorge Cook. Hey. Hayi.
Young writes, does Leon Schuster do blackface? Quite obviously. Is Schuster blackfacing? This is not as clear. In interviews, he implies that he is not, in fact, a white man mocking black people. Rather, he is mocking white people's reaction to black people. This also happens to be the opinion of many of those who came to Schuster's defense after Showmax removed his films. They argue, like Schuster, that his use of blackface is not an act of racism, rather an act of exposing white people's racism against black people. But naturally, not everyone agrees. In the wake of Showmax announcing their decision to review Schuster films, Rob van Vuuren issued an apology on Twitter. His apology began, "There is no easy way to say this. In 2013, I did a blackface in a Leon Schuster movie. I am deeply ashamed about this fact and very sorry for the hurt it has caused." He further stated, quote, "I wish I could say that I didn't know any better at the time, but the truth is that I did. I made all sorts of excuses for myself at the time to justify doing it. I pointed to the diversity of the demographic of Leon's audience. I argued that his work was most powerful when it exposed white hypocrisy in the Rainbow Nation and revealed the fears and anxieties of a white minority unwilling to relinquish its privilege. I convinced myself that any of the characters I portrayed would be from a place of love and respect. However, as a white father of a child of color, I failed to examine my own privilege and prejudice, and despite knowing which direction my moral compass was pointing, I chose to take the money and run in the opposite direction." Those who consider Schuster's movies to be racist believe the filmmaker should take a tip from Van Vuuren and issue an apology. Phumla Dineo-Qola, a South African author, made a Twitter thread in which she expressed confusion as to why Schuster films, which rely on old colonial stereotypes, her words, could still be so popular with South Africans. She also wrote that artistic work doesn't have to be oppressive in order to be funny. In a 2018 Sunday Times interview, Schuster expressed regret about having profited from blackface, as he said it was, quote, racist. Quote, "I won't go blackface now, it's just racist." He also mentioned that he had received many messages from fans begging him never to do it again. He also admitted that he still longs to make a sequel to Mama Jack, but has accepted that he can no longer don blackface. "I'm so sorry that I can't make Mama Jack 2. If I had a dream come true, my next movie would be Mama Jack 2. But especially on Twitter, they said, stay away from blackface. It's not on. It was black people talking to me, and you've got to listen. I can't do it because I'll be heavily criticized. In the olden days, it troubled nobody. But I won't go blackface now. I can't do it. There's no one actor in the world that will. It's just racist." However, in the same Sunday Times article, Schuster says he will continue to play on colored people racial stereotypes because, quote, "Cape Coloureds have got a very good sense of humor." On Twitter, those who believe Schuster's films to be problematic said they were glad to see Schuster's films removed from Showmax, and they could not understand why other South Africans were not offended by Schuster's cinematography. Or as Harris eloquently put it in his 2014 Vox article, "Finally, if you really cannot understand what's wrong with blackface, challenge yourself to figure out what seems so right about it. Ask yourself, why do I derive pleasure from this? What's the investment in doing it? And what's the investment in defending it?" So why do some people maintain that Schuster's films are not racist? Schuster himself has always maintained that his movies are not meant to offend. Schuster's longtime on-screen collaborator Alfred Ndombela agrees with Schuster. He shared a Facebook post in which he said, "They say my friend is racist, but if you would check, his movies are full of South Africans, and that means he's proud of us being united and one. These movies were made for us to laugh and to show that we're proudly South African." He also said, "I have been trained and mentored over the years and have become one of South Africa's most successful and well-known actors by my mentor, best friend and partner in crime, Leon Schuster." He ended the post with the sentence, "Our movies were made for entertainment and in good taste to make South Africans laugh." Schuster recently said of his movies, "When the films were released, the cinemas were packed shoulder to shoulder with people of all races, genders, and ages that laughed and enjoyed the films." And he isn't kidding. Schuster's films rake in millions at the South African box office. For example, in 2009, Mr. Bones 2 became the highest grossing South African film. Similarly, in 2015, Sharks Pay Back the Money ranked in more than 17 million at the South African box office, going head-to-head with international releases like Hotel Transylvania 2 and the Divergence series Insurgents. This obviously shows that South Africans don't find Schuster's movies to be racist. Schuster has been hailed as one of the most successful South African filmmakers of all time. And more recently, he was labeled as an accidental blackface hero by Phumlani Piccoli in an article in the Mail and Guardian. In his article titled "Oh Shucks, an Accidental Blackface Hero," Piccoli writes, "Now, I'm not here to defend Schuster or his career, rather to highlight his early ability to expose the festering wound that the rainbow tried to plaster." Piccoli further gives many examples of sketch in which Schuster, quote, "highlights the moral bankruptcy of South Africa as a country that a lot of liberal white people would view as an embarrassing depiction and a lot of black people would view as fair as their skin," end quote. Piccoli's article seems to suggest that although Schuster movies make use of blackface, he can be excused because he used it as an agent for exposing the fragility of race relations between black and white South Africans in apartheid and post-apartheid South Africa. This is an idea shared by many other Twitter users who say they are not offended by Schuster movies because not only did he expose racism, but he also portrayed other characters in other races, as evidenced by this poster. Others have blamed what has been dubbed woke culture for the unnecessary attack on Schuster movies by Showmax. I've always found Leon Schuster movies to be meh. I don't hate them, but I don't love them either. You know, meh. With that said, I really want to stress the fact that this video only touches the surface. Blackface and racism in South Africa are very complex topics, so I encourage you to do your own research and find more information if you're interested. The question of whether Leon Schuster movies are racist is not an easy one to answer. The real question we should be asking ourselves, however, is this one. Thank you for watching my video. Have a good one. Bye.